In the last video, we focused a lot on theory. We looked at what the weenie is as it related to Walt Disney, as well as a little bit about depth and forced perspective, which is used in a lot of films as well, like Lord of the Rings, as well as Elf, that starred Will Ferrell. So what we're going to talk about in this video is a little bit about scripting. And the reason for that is the next few level design philosophies aren't just about layout. They require a little bit of interactivity with our project. And we're going to get into Blueprints coding, but don't worry too much about it being too difficult or too confusing. I'm going to take everything step by step. Though I will keep it basic because in a few other courses, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail or more in depth into Blueprints. And in this, I want to focus more on level design. So I just want to get you a little more comfortable and up and running in Blueprints right away. So let's begin by creating a new level here. This is the one that I was sort of demoing pretty quickly inside the last video. And you should at this point know how to get assets from Fab, which is up here, as well as add simple objects. If not, it's okay. I don't mind adding refresher. Either let me know and I'll make a video, or we can meet up one-on-one. I'll help you with your project. But for now, let's go ahead up to the top here and go to File. And let's go ahead and create a new level. And I'd like to do a basic level without all of the lighting, and then just hit Create. Now, you'll see it wants to select us to save content. I'm just going to save mine. It's totally fine. Now, when I press play, you should see a character appear, and you should be able to run around your scene and move your mouse and stuff. All right, in your left-hand side here, in our blank level, go ahead and go down to Content Drawer and click on that. And then right here it says Dock and Layout, and go ahead and click on that as well. And what this will do is this will dock our content drawer or content browser in the bottom layout. And I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down a little bit. And what I'd like to do is, now I'm not on my normal machine where I was recording the water scene and all that stuff. So we could always return to that level, but so I'm on a new project. So that's why you're not seeing many of the same folders. So I'm just going to right click in here and go to new folder, and you'll probably notice a little bit of lag because this is a Windows machine that doesn't have all of the bells and whistles of my studio. So I'm going to go ahead and click on or type out Blueprints here. And oh, it looks like there's already a Blueprints folder in here. I want to make sure that I'm not on the third folder that new. So let's see. Let's go ahead and just unclick there. I want to make a folder outside here. So let's just go to all here and then right click and create a new folder. Or content rather. New folder. And I'll just call this BP to save time. There we go. So there's our Blueprints folder. So those of you who are not familiar, there are two ways of coding inside of Unreal. There's C++ and then there's Blueprints, which is a visual scripting language. So let's take a look at creating our first Blueprint class just for fun. So I'm going to right click in this BP folder, which is short for Blueprints, and I'm going to go up to Blueprint class. And you can see in the definition here, it says Blueprints are special assets that provide intuitive, node-based interface that can be used to create new types of actors, script level events, and give designers and gameplay programmers the tools to quickly create and iterate gameplay from within the Unreal Engine. And so again, without even writing a line of code. So this is a very powerful tool, and there are people who have jobs that are, they're level designers and so forth that only use Blueprints. So let's go ahead and, I mean, amongst other tools, but instead of C++, they script mostly in Blueprints. So let's click on this. And what we're going to create is an actor. And it's an actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. And then there's like pawns. A pawn is an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller. And then there's a character, which is similar to a pawn. So don't worry too much about this. If you get too much into the sticks, you're going to start to feel overwhelmed or nervous. And a lot of times people sort of end up quitting doing 3D art or game because the interface is so vast. And you don't have to know the whole interface. You just need to know, some core things and then build on. Anyway, let's go ahead and click on actor. Now, generally, you would type BP underscore either in the beginning or the end, depending on the studio you're at. So I'm going to do BP fun because we're just going to use this for fun. I'm going to press enter. Now, the reason for that is one, it identifies it as a blueprint. And then second, it makes it easier to search. So if I type BP here, notice that it highlights BP and it'll highlight anything that has BP in the front. So it makes it a little bit easier to search out your blueprint. So let's go ahead and double click this to open it up. And I want to dock this in my interface here. And so now you can see I could switch between my scene and then back to BP fun. Eventually, we'll get through what all of the different parts of this interface are. But for now, just understand that The components part are really, it's what we see in our scene here. So you can see there's this empty sort of game object that everything is parent to. Then I have a default scene root, which is the root of it. And as I click these, notice on the right-hand side here in the details panel that this updates, right? So you have the variable name, the transform, whether this is visible or not, all that good stuff. And you could also add components, like I can add a skeleton mesh or static mesh or sphere, and you can see that appears in the scene as a component. And on my right-hand side in my details panel, these also update, right? The scale, I can tweak it here. And if I compile and save this and I go back into my scene and I drag this in the interface here, you can see that sphere is updated. So if I go back in here and I delete this sphere, and I compile and save this, and I go back to Untitled, you can see it disappears here too. Now, another important part here is graphs. We have an event graph, and then we see underneath here we have this event begin play, actor begin overlap, and event tick. So what are these, right? And when we hover over, it says event when play begins for this actor. So if we go over to this event graph here, this represents this here. So if I'm in my viewport and I double click this, depending on, sometimes on my Mac, when I double click it, it doesn't open. I'm not sure why. You can see it opens up my event graph here, and these little nodes here, which are event nodes, represent these three here. So if I right click and hold, I can pan, I can scroll my wheel in to zoom. If I hold control and scroll in, you can see I can zoom in that way as well. So these are things to keep in mind as you're sort of looking at this interface. Again, could seem a little bit daunting, and some of the things I'm saying can appear as word salad, but don't worry too much about this. We're going to get a little bit more in detail as we start to build out things in our game. So before I end this video, I just want to clarify. These nodes are visual representations of C++ code. So you could essentially, later I always advise people like students, like, wait, if you have a little bit of time on your hands, take a little time every day to learn C++, especially how it relates to scripting in Unreal. But for now, this is a very powerful system. The only downside I find it to be, and I think, maybe they've remedied it in this version of Unreal, I don't know yet, is that these blueprints tends to be a little bit slower than C++, and sometimes a lot slower, because with C++, rather, you're programming on sort of the native level. With this, there's layers of visual layers and things like that can slow it down. Anyway, I think that's a good introduction on how to create a blueprint class. In the next couple of videos, we're going to look at how we can use blueprints and how they work.